Hello and welcome, guys. Thank you again for joining me. Tonight, as we're talking about identifying mediocrity. And it's so amazing that we're doing this subject tonight because you will see that mediocrity relates to a lot of things that I've talked about in the past sessions. So I'm excited that you're here with me tonight. And you can also, if you find yourself in the topics, this one of two that we're going to do on mediocrity, if you find yourself and you need a little extra assistance, this book here is available on Amazon and also by visiting my website, www.triciabraysmith.weebly.com. You can see where you can get your copy of my book, Recreating a Better Me. Once again, I appreciate you dedicating your time. I look forward to these nights with you, and I hope that you have been enjoying your time here with me as well, guys. So go ahead and like and share this video. As always, go ahead and like and share this video. I do hope that throughout your day, you have found yourself educating and catching up on the other timelines from your friends that are located on social media. Some of them are sending out some very good, encouraging things to kind of help us along while we're in a state of quarantine. Guys, we're all in this together, and sometimes it just takes using our gifts and talents to lift one another up and help support one another through such trying times. I am so grateful to have my team of Eagles alongside me. I'm also grateful for my family who is in and out, that rotates time to be with me throughout these days of isolation during this pandemic in our world. Well, tonight I wanted to just kind of help you identify what mediocrity is, because if you have conversations with me, some of the things that one of the words that you would hear me say is mediocrity, or that's mediocre. And all that is saying is that it's just a mindset or a state of being average, ordinary, and sometimes even below average or below ordinary. Just depends on kind of what the situation is. So, and there's really not a whole lot wrong with having a mediocre mindset, because we live every day, and probably 95% of the people you meet will be in this state of mind. Just an average state of mind. There's just ordinary people. There's nothing extraordinary there. And they're just satisfied with life from day to day, just so. So, can be good people. But hopefully tonight you'll kind of be able to identify with some of the characteristics and be able to distinguish people who are in this mindset, and may even sometimes we find ourselves here in a state of mediocrity. And so tonight I just want to identify it, and then tomorrow I'll come back and show you how to give you some tips and techniques on how to overcome mediocrity if that's where you find yourself. All right, guys, so we just discovered or just established that it's a mindset of being average or ordinary. And we know that we meet ordinary people every day, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what keeps us here in a state of just being ordinary or just being average, nothing setting us aside compared to anybody else. It's not really a comparison, but nothing to distinguish us from the next person, is that If we're in a state of just being average or ordinary, most likely we're not living out our purpose or our dreams. We were all created with a gift and talent and a purpose for life. And so many of us, we never tap into that. We never take the risk. We never take the risk. We never take the time to develop ourselves. And a lot of times when we find ourselves in a state of mediocrity, we're okay with it because we think that this is who we are and this is the norm. This is all we know. And when we're never in a situation or to be exposed to anything different, then a lot of times we're just okay with just being who we are. We can know that there's something more in life for us, but never really take that next step, that initiative to develop and see what it is. So we live a life that's ordinary and average, and we die taking all that potential to the grave with us. So this is what makes our graveyards so rich and wealthy. It's because 95% of the people we meet live the life just ordinary, and they died never really tapping into what they could have. So it leaves us here in a life still waiting on your answers, waiting on what you have to share with us in this world. Mediocrity focuses on entertainment and distractions. Have you ever saw people that every time you tried to have a conversation with them, they were distracted by something, or always going to the next big party or looking for the next big event to go and surround themselves with? That's a state of mediocrity. Because when you're chasing distractions and entertainment, you're not focusing on developing yourself. As a matter of fact, people that are always distracted or entertaining, how do they have time to focus on developing themselves? A life outside of mediocrity, which is living your dreams and your purpose and developing yourself, it takes time. And in that circle, it's very small. In a life of distractions and entertainment, there's always a crowd around. There's always someone in your ear. There's always a conversation going on. Your mindset is always somewhere else. So there's no time for self-development because you're so crowded with everything else that's going on. So if you're always focused on the entertainment, what's on television, I got to watch my show, and you're sitting in front of the television more than 3 or 4 hours a day, then you're probably in a state of mediocrity. Because if you're sitting in front of that television is designed to control your mind. And the only thing you're developing is whatever it's feeding you through that tube. Same thing with social media. When you guys are surfing every day, and you have to be careful of the content that you allow into your mental capacity. Because that content is put out there, it's created to control your mind. And oftentimes, all it takes is seeing that one thing that sends off a trigger, that one thing that gets us stirred up, get our emotions going. So we have to be intentional with protecting this mind so that we don't find ourselves always distracted and seeking out entertainment. Another thing with mediocrity and how to identify it is when you see those jealous people. These are people that are so consumed with the comparison of comparing themselves to someone else that they can't perceive or see past their jealous intent. So that lets you know that they are in a state of mediocrity. Well, she has a car, so I'm going to get me a car. She has a new dress, so I'm going to get one just a little more expensive, just a little bit better than hers. Well, if she can wear lashes, let me show her that I can wear lashes too. You know, it's always a game, always comparing yourself to someone else. That is a state of mediocrity. No one has time to compare themselves to someone else or to make someone else feel inferior or less than. Remember that I said when we work on ourselves, we look for team players. So if she's cute, I'm cute too, right? So, you know that. So she got a new job or a new car. Let's celebrate her in what she done. That's what team players do. It's not a comparison. It's not a competition. But when you see people that are jealous hearted, it's because they are in a state of just being average and ordinary. And so they see things that maybe they desire or maybe that causes them to get in their feelings in some way that it produces jealousy. And it's just an ongoing thing. Everything they see, they see through the eyes of jealousy. It's because the state of mind is so average or so ordinary, and sometimes, like I said, even below average or below ordinary. Because jealousy, it's not natural. It's not natural to see people and envy their things that they have and have take on that jealous nature. That's not natural. It's not natural. No one that's living out their purpose and on their road to success is going to worry about the materials collected by somebody else, because there's a thing that we say in this life, and that is, I am comfortable in my own lane. I'm comfortable in my own lane. So I don't have to look to the left or to right. I'm comfortable in the lane that was created for me. I'm comfortable at the pace that I'm going. And can't nobody do what I do better than I can. Okay, you do what you do, right? You do what you do, and you are good and you're successful and it produces for you, but you can't do what I do like me. Because what I do has my own special touch, my own unique spin on it. So this is the mindset where we that have overcome those mediocre things, this is the state of mind that we eventually get to. So yes, you do what you do and you do well, but what you do and what I do is like comparing apples and oranges. There's no comparison there, right? So we have to be secure in what we do and how we do it, and not take on that jealous nature, because that jealous nature is a state of mediocrity. Another thing is that people that are in mediocrity or in a mediocre state of mind always focuses on the problem. Everything they see, they instead of trying to find the solution for it, they focus on what the problem is. These are the people that can call you on the phone and they can tell you everything that's going on wrong in the city during this quarantine. They know who's suffering. They know who can't pay their bills this month. They know who had to go and get a little extra assistance. They know who out of toilet paper. They know everything. And they don't mind calling up somebody to tell them about it and laugh about it and pray about it or whatever it is that they say they doing. A lot of times we say we praying and yeah, we praying, but we ain't praying for them. We praying on them, and we got our house stocked up and we sitting on it. Because if we're really trying to help somebody, we wouldn't have to try to call somebody. We take from our stash and hand it out. That's what people do. But the people in a state of mediocrity, they just want to focus on the problem, and it's all negative, 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 right? So no solutions for anything, because they're not looking for solutions. They just want to focus on the problem. And the more you try to give them a solution, the more they're going to come up with another excuse to create a problem. So they're satisfied right where they are, focus on the things that they're focused on, the problem. And there's no change in that. So when you see people that are like that, just accept them for who they are. That is who they are. And if they're not willing to change, ain't nothing you can do. You can come up with all the solutions in the world, wrap it up and sit it in their lap, and they still going to be who they are. So we're talking tonight. Thank you guys for logging on. We're talking tonight about identifying mediocrity. Most of you have heard me say several times, speak about, oh, that's just mediocre, or it's mediocrity. And then there's a chapter in my book that talks about overcoming the barriers of mediocrity. So it just talks about what I've done to try to overcome some of the barriers in my mind, because I thought so average and so ordinary for years. But it's about identifying those characteristics and doing what's necessary to overcome those characteristics. Okay? So being more than average is eventually where we want to get to. But right now we're talking about mediocrity and how to identify some of the characteristics associated with having a mind state of mediocrity. A person who lives in fear. A person who lives in fear, that's a character trait of being in mediocrity. Fear keeps you from developing who you are created to be. Fear holds you back. So if fear has you in a state to where you're not moving forward, you're not moving back, you're just satisfied right where you are, then you're not developing yourself to be anything more than average or ordinary. So that's a state of mediocrity, because sometimes we fail to make decisions because of fear. Now, we can kind of look at this on several different sides. With this quarantine and stuff going on, there's a lot of condescending, a lot of sarcastic remarks being made during this time of crisis. But because so much of what's going on is unknown, a situation like this can be elevated in the mind of someone else who was already living in a state of fear. Because when crisis comes, that creates a whole nother dynamic of the things that we already had going on. So if we were already in a state of mediocrity through living in fear, then you're really in fear now. You're literally scared for your life. And you could be at home suffering and going without, and we'd never know it. Because you live in that much fear, that fear controls you. And it keeps you in a state of suffering as a result of it. Because as a result, when you are in a state of mediocrity, chances are you're surrounding yourself with other people who also live in the state of mediocrity. So you're associating with people that you can't help, and they can't help you in return. And so you sit and you complain and you're jealous hearted and jealous natured and all this, talking all this with your crowd, with your in crowd, and yet no help ever comes your way. Because remember, all they do is focus on the problem. All they do is focus on the problem. Another characteristic that identifies whether or not we're in a state of mediocrity is that we focus on our fears. We focus on our failures. Remember, I shared with you in some earlier videos that I failed many times. I couldn't allow that failure to define who I am or who I desire to become. There's so much more that I know that's in me even now. I told you guys also that when I first started doing these videos, I was okay as long as my girls and my family was sitting side beside me. But the day I had to sit in front of this camera by myself, there was a whole nother situation. So I could have let that stop me when they were not able to come and sit with me and record with me. I could have let that stop me, guys, if I was in that state of mind. But I know that there's a purpose in life for everything. And yes, it was good that they said somebody was here to sit with me for the first few days of this, because I don't know if I could have made it this far. It's always that risk of failing or having someone make a comment to criticize you or to minimize you or to draw up old things. That's always, like I said, when we're on a platform, you're on the front line for negative things, to be somebody's target. So we can't allow the fear of failure or the fear of criticism to stop what your purpose is in life. We have to just keep pressing. So what if we fail? If we fail, we'll just fail our way to success. There's no one who has gotten where they are without failing somewhere along the way. Success is built upon the blocks of failure. So we fall, we get back up, we keep pressing. And that's all we can do. There's many times in life, I know that maybe I felt like I was a failure as an educator. But they couldn't stop me. I have to put myself in a place to where I can grow and develop and do. Another characteristic of mediocrity is being judgmental. And I see a lot of this. And I think that being judgmental not only comes from our personal experiences in life, but I believe that a lot of judgmental tendencies we learn from our religious practices. I just believe that we have been so conditioned to modern day religion that we just judge everything. And sometimes I think that we're so confident in our judgmental tendencies that sometimes I think we judge too soon. A person judging me 10 years ago would have judged me too soon. If I judge my kids 5 years ago, then I judge them too soon. People are always developing and evolving. And so we don't know who anyone is going to develop and evolve to be. So we have to be careful about being so judgmental on things. There's a lot of judgment being passed now because the law says stay at home. Stay at home, stay safe, shelter in place. That's what the government has charged us to do. But sometimes in our religious practices, sometimes we just perceive things wrong. I believe that it's okay to be secure in your faith, in your religion. But I also believe that when you don't know or you don't have all the information, you have to be wise in the decisions you make and what you choose to do. Because then you put yourself at risk or at danger, and it's done foolishness. It's foolish. So some things we are judging prematurely. Some things we aren't judging wise enough, guys. So just being judgmental, it keeps us in a state of mediocrity. Fault finders. And we see these everywhere, and I'm guilty. This is one of the areas I have to really work on. I'm a fault finder. You can just say something and I can find fault in it. I can just look at something and find fault in it. And it's an area that I have to work on every day. So when I find myself thinking and perceiving things and being a fault finder, then that's something I have to work on. I have to stop and think. I have to not dwell on it too much. And certainly have to be certain that I don't mess up and speak it publicly. Because I don't want to be that one. That's not what I want to portray. But remember, like I said, just because we have thoughts, it doesn't necessarily make it right or wrong, but it's not necessary for you to speak it just because you think it. You know people that don't have those kind of filters, don't have that kind of self-control, so they'll just speak whatever that comes to their mind. That's not right. It's not the way we should be, because we find ourselves speaking things that hurt people. And then we'll say, well, the Lord knows my heart. Yes, he knows your heart. Because you know where your heart is? He knows your state of mind. And you can't produce good things in this mind if you're not putting good things in. So that's when I have to be careful. Is when I know I haven't regulated this, and I find fault in things, then that's something I have to shut my mouth. And I have to work on this and call all that kind of stuff down, because it's not right. Another characteristic of being mediocre is that we make excuses. We make excuses for things. And if you call me on something, I got an excuse. Never follow through, never hold to commitments. That person is probably in a state of mediocrity. Okay, because we make excuses. And you know what they say about excuses, right? But there's nothing more that gets on my nerve more than somebody making excuses all the time. I just don't even want to be bothered with them. You make excuses all the time? I find that we only make excuses for the things that we really just don't want to do. Why not just say we don't want to do it and save the excuse? So people that always, every time you hear them, oh, it's some sob story. It is what it is. Spare me the details, okay? If you can't do it, you just can't do it, guys. But that's because you're in a state of mediocrity. So if you're one of those that make excuses all the time, then this is why. Because this is what average people do. This is what ordinary people do. They make excuses. They blame. You know that someone that never wants to assume responsibility for what they do? They want to um, blame the man for not being able to get a job. They want to blame society for racial profiling them. They want to just put blame on everything. We never want to assume responsibility for what we do. And it's so easy to identify these type, because these type are usually the ones that want something for nothing. And sometimes I just wonder, do they ever just sit back and take a look at themselves? Now, oftentimes, you're not getting hired on the job you desire. One, it's probably because you're not qualified, or you hadn't prepared yourself, you hadn't developed yourself, your communication skill bad, you won't have your won't wear the proper attire, you won't present yourself. I mean, it's just so much that goes into it, but it's so easy for us to just blame. If we can pass the blame, then we can stay in the state that we're in, and everyone else has to change and not me. So we're okay with that. Also, there are those that complain. People that can complain all the time. Always sick, always this, always that. Just complain, complain, complain. And that, I don't even want to get into that because that gets on my nerve. It's something that I cannot stand, is to be around people that just complain all the time about anything. Because in my personality, the way I think, if it's that bad, why don't you do something about it? But in their mind, they're not complaining because they want something done about it. They just complain because that's just the way that their mind is wired. So I've shared with you several characteristics that can help you identify mediocrity. So if you found yourself somewhere in that, and I know sometimes it's easy for us to find ourselves in one or two, and that just lets us know that we're growing and developing. There's always still work that we can do on ourselves. However, if you found yourself in more than 3 or 4 of these characteristics, then this book, Recreating a Better Me, may be a good resource for you. Because what that will do is help you identify those characteristics. It'll ask you the hard questions. And if you do the work, you can begin to transform your mind. And as you transform your mind, you transform your life. So tomorrow we'll be talking about how to overcome mediocrity. I'll share with you some tips and techniques that I've done to help me transform my mind and how I think. And also, I hope that it will be beneficial for you to just lay some ideas out there, and maybe you can adopt some of those techniques or some of those resources, so that while you're at home during this time of isolation and social distancing, that maybe you can begin to work on your own mind. That way, so when we come out of this, we will be better. We will be able to move further into our purpose as doors of opportunity begin to present itself and open for us. Guys, I appreciate you joining me tonight. Don't forget also to like and share this video. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow night. Have a good night.